There it is, the abrupt intro ending. Welcome in, John Cast Podcast. Got a new episode for you. Thank you for joining. Make sure to follow, subscribe, whatever you got to do to not miss a new episode on whatever platform, podcast platform you're listening to this. Follow, subscribe, so you do not miss a new episode. We'll get to today's guest in just a second. But I had some volleyball thoughts. I had some volleyball thoughts from not only the Fiserv Forum match, which I kind of already laid out a little bit last week on how amazing that was to play in front of 17,037, just kind of the state of volleyball in general, you know, with the 92,000 at Nebraska, Louisville had 12,000, 17,000 the same night at Fiserv Forum. And then we go to Sunday in what was probably the biggest match of the season for number one Wisconsin volleyball. It was only the third time that I could find in program history that Wisconsin had a top three matchup. The other two times happened in 2016, both losses, ironically, to Minnesota. Now, so this was the third time that something like this has ever happened. It's a big flipping match, not only from that perspective, but from the perspective of what type of team can you be this season? You know, you've gone through 8 matches already. So there's something under your belt. You're learning and figuring out the lineup and figuring out your teammates, the new teammates, and just trying to get a new libero. You've had 8 matches to do that. Now you've got perhaps the biggest test in front of you. And they passed that test in front of another rowdy volleyball crowd. So this whole concept of volleyball is taking off this year. I mean, the numbers are showing that. The ratings are showing that on Big Ten Network for that Nebraska match. And so, like, just to be able to do what they did on the road, 10,323 fans in Gainesville. That's a record attendance for them, for Florida, by the way. And in their biggest match of the season, as the number one team in the country, and to overcome an 0-2 deficit and to win in 5, it's you know, as much as you could ask for. Now, they didn't start well. Even Coach Sheffield, after the fact, said, you know, Florida was in system. We couldn't set, we couldn't pass. Nothing was working for them right away. So right out the gate, it wasn't the best start, but they don't determine winners after one set, you know. And, you know, Coach Sheffield after the match also talked about how they just got more comfortable handling some of the shots Florida was giving them. And obviously there was a big moment too when Florida's starting setter had a knee injury and she had to leave, and I don't know her prognosis. I have not looked that up, but obviously that did not appear to be a very positive thing for Florida. I thought her backup, who's a Wisconsin kid, by the way, who grew up going to Wisconsin camps and now thrust in this situation after playing at Flagler College, transferring to Florida and being thrown in. I thought that was just a unique storyline. And, you know, so there is that aspect to consider as well, but those are things out of your control. What you can control is you won an amazing match and you passed the last test, because I'll tell you what, that match, like I said, was a big deal to this team. It was. And to be able to overcome that and win. And, you know, one of the other things that I think is important that I think can only get better is Coach Sheffield also pointed out after that match, in the huddle, there was a ton of positive talk. There was no panic. And that's hard to do, especially with 10,323 being loud and you're down 0-2 to what is a really great dynamic team that you're trying to beat. Like, to stay positive is, I think that's a win in itself, because that I believe is just going to compound over the rest of the season. That positivity that you can bring, and we've done this before. Now you have also, like, hey, we've stayed calm before and it's worked, so let's just keep doing this. And, you know, having to do that and then at the same time grind through what Coach Sheffield also described kind of as like a muddy match. I loved it, and I love where the sport's headed. I can't believe all of these crowds that we're getting. I mean, I guess I can believe, but I just hope the decision makers in television and in print, and I guess in radio, look at this and say, hey, there is something obviously happening here. And it's great for the sport, and it's great for those student athletes. Okay, those are my volleyball thoughts for the day. Let's get to today's guest, where we can continue the volleyball discussion. Sorry, I went on a diatribe there a little bit, but today's guest is the sports director at WKOW Television in Madison, and I'm excited to have her hear her thoughts on Badger volleyball, Badger football, heck, even the Packers game on Sunday. I'd like to welcome Karley Marotta to the John Cast podcast. What's going on, Karley?
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. I loved your initial thoughts. They were great.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't expect them to be that long-winded, but I know you were at Pfizer Forum, so you got to be part of that record-setting indoor crowd. And I know you kept track, obviously, on Sunday in the matchup against Florida. Kind of what are your thoughts on this team? And like I was saying there, in general, the sport of volleyball and how it's really taken a big step forward this season.
If you are not watching volleyball, you are missing out. It is the most exciting sport, literally, to watch, I think. When I came to Madison, I wasn't much of a volleyball fan, to be honest. I just never really watched it or anything, like through college or growing up. And then once I came here, I remember my first time going to that Badger volleyball practice, and I was like mind blown. I was like, this is amazing. I could sit here and watch every practice. And from there, I just got hooked. And now, just to see where the sport is, I feel like I was one of those fans that also, as the sport grew, I was also just becoming a bigger fan. And now, NFL Sundays, my husband and I had Badger volleyball on the TV, Wisconsin, Florida, instead of NFL games and red zone, which we live for. We talk about it all week, Sunday red zone, it's our favorite day. And we had Wisconsin, Florida volleyball on because that match was just so exciting, and every match is so exciting. So I think you're missing out if you're not watching volleyball, like you said, and I just love to see how big the sport has gotten, and I love the investment into women's sports in general.
And that's a big key too, right? Like it's really proving that if you invest the time and energy into this, you can see, at least through attendance, that people respond to that. And I think that's important too, because it shows to the decision makers, hey, guess what? This can also potentially one day become, revenue making, can become this type of sport that we can invest more time and more effort into as well. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love the investment into women's sports, but just talking about Badger volleyball in general and talking about that Florida match, I just wanted to say a couple of things off of some of your initial thoughts. And I would be scared to face the Badgers if I was any other team. I mean, down 0-2, I'm even thinking, man, like, they're going to get swept. Like, dang, like, I just didn't think that. I thought this would be a better match. And then I was even like, never give up on the Badgers ever, because they just have this fight in them that's really impressive. And I think, those are the teams that win titles and rings. And so I think just seeing Wisconsin battle back down 0-2, it looked like they were out of it completely. And the adjustments from the team, and Kelly Sheffield deserves obviously so much credit. And I like how you said they stayed positive throughout that. And I feel like Coach Sheffield is the one who really, sets the tone, and he's the one that brings that out of his team, which is just impressive and great. And I think they are set up for long-term this season and every season to come, with Sheffield leading the way.
I think you're right, because there are obviously times to get fired up, I think, as a coach to show emotion, but I think he understands too that the positive speak, the way you communicate with each other, like that long term is going to help lead to more success. So you're right. I think he definitely identifies that as being pretty important for the 2023 Badgers or any other year that he's coached. Also and I'd like to get more into your background, because I believe you have a brother and a sister who played college athletics.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you probably are going to understand another interesting aspect of this match. And it's the mindset of an athlete. And the mindset of an athlete, I'm talking about Devin Robinson. Now, here's why. Let me show everybody, if you're watching on Spotify or eventually here when I put it up on YouTube, I'm going to show you a post from last season after Florida came to Wisconsin and beat the Badgers in 5 sets. This was their Instagram post. It says history made. I'm trying to describe what we're looking at. Can you see that, Karley?
Yeah, I can see it.
It says history made, largest crowd in a regular season match. It's a graphic. So history made at the very top, underneath it, largest crowd in a regular season match. And it's got a picture of a Florida player, superimposed sitting on top of the Kohl Center. And below that, the description says 16,833 saw what Gators VB is all about tonight. Now, that's fine. I get it. I think sometimes, we read too much into the intent behind certain things. I'm not sure what the intent was behind here. Obviously, you could have gone about it a little differently, right? Like maybe the angle could have been like the sport, something positive for the sport, but they chose to put a player sitting on top of the Kohl Center and kind of mock the fact that 16,833 got to watch the Gators win. I get it. Now, you have to be careful, social media, pro, college, or whatever, because athletes will find almost anything to get motivated about. Tiny, big, whatever it is. And let me share my screen now. So if you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, this is Devin Robinson's response to that. So she posted how it started versus how it's going last year. They got theirs, and this year we got ours. And she put a picture. She posted that picture that they posted. And then she also added a picture of herself sitting on top of the O'Connell Center and Exact Tech Arena inside there. The O-Dome is what they call it. And it says 10,323 people saw what Badger VB is all about. So obviously that stuck in, that served as motivation. And you know what? I like that. I like how she it's almost like she didn't start it, but she ended it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She don't start it, but she can tell you how it's going to end. Right. So
yeah.
I loved that tweet because I think she also closed the door like, okay, you did that. We did that. Let's move on.
I love it. I love the competitiveness. Remember in the women's basketball Final Four national championship with Caitlin Clark, and there was, the debate over, is she being too much or whatever. And Caitlin and the other girls were like, no, we love it. Like, this is good for the game. We love the competitiveness and the fire. And I feel like it gets everyone talking. And the more people are talking about women's sports, and I feel like it's better for the sport. So I love it. I honestly liked it from both sides, but just because we cover the Badgers, I love that they were able to, come back at the end with that. And there's no reply right now to Devin Robinson doing that. It's great.
But but I think it's also cool because it shows this like how athletes will use. Basically, if you're an elite athlete, like you're gonna find a way to get motivated. Whether it's through self-motivation, team motivation, others outside, external motivate. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was a cool example that we see a lot of, and just, hey, sometimes you just gotta be careful. Like, you gotta be a little humble with the victory. I get it. I don't know. It's such a tough thing because elite players are gonna find anything to get fired up about.
Yeah. I love it. I love the motivation. I'm sure Devin went in there. The Badgers went in there just wanting to get revenge from last season at the Kohl Center. I know that was probably a really tough loss for them, especially because the history was made and they went down. So to go into Florida and really to take it from them after being down 0-2 says everything. And, good for the Badgers.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. All right. I want to get your thoughts too on the Badger Georgia Southern game. There's a few things that stuck out to me, one off the field, but I feel like the word of the day for Badger football to me is patience. And the reason I say that is because we've seen 3 games with 3 very slow starts, right? Starts that I understand as a football fan, you're going to be like, what's going on here? But I also believe we've seen second halves of games have looked a lot better. And just like that positive talk in the Badger volleyball huddle, I'm trying to, as a fan, have some Badger positivity as well and some positive talk, though. Although I understand the aspect of slow starts, and obviously they do. They don't want to do every game, play every game where they need a huge second half to get back in it or to put a team away. But I'm going to focus on the positives. So I still think there's something there. I don't think we've seen anywhere close to what Wisconsin football under Luke Fickell can become. but I think we see glimpses of what they want it to become.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the third quarters. They've looked really, really good in the third quarters. And, Luke Fickell was asked, do you feel like how you guys have played in the third quarters is what you're hoping for, or what you're envisioning that this team will look like for all 4 quarters? And, he obviously said yes. And he said, Rome wasn't built in 3 weeks. That was kind of his quote yesterday. He's hoping that this team is built faster. But yeah, it's about being patient. I think I personally had a little bit higher expectations. But I understand that I had higher expectations, I think, for the defense, and just that pass coverage is something that was surprising to me. I think there's a lot of room for improvement on the defense. I knew the new offense was going to take time to, settle into that new air raid offense. But yeah, I think I was just a little bit disappointed how the defense came out, but I like to see that they, forced 6 turnovers in this last game, and hopefully, we're on the up.
So what are your expectations then? Because obviously 2-1 start, we're getting ready for Big Ten play. Like with all these, we haven't seen what we think we could see out of the team yet. Like I don't know. I'm just trying to, because once again, I'm trying to be positive, but like, is 9 wins? Is that, are we going to have to suffer through a couple of losses as a fan base and kind of just accept that these are the growing pains of year 1?
Yeah, but I'm expecting them to get to the Big Ten championship game, just because the Big Ten West, I feel like they should win. They should win the Big Ten West and land a spot in that championship game. I don't know if they'll win the Big Ten championship, but my expectation is for them to get there. They have the talent. So I feel like it's good to see that the third quarters have been good. And I'm just hoping that going into Big Ten play, they get that fire back. I know Luke Fickell said they didn't really have that fire until 4 minutes into the second half. And he's just hoping to bring that out of them sooner. So hopefully starting Big Ten play, he said, preseason's over, even though it's, not preseason, but that's what he called it. So hopefully they feel that fire right away going into this Big Ten opener on Friday and play more of a full game rather than just that third quarter, second half.
Okay, you got to help me out here, because this is something that totally escaped me on social media. If you're not on social media 7 days a week looking at every single post, you're going to miss 1 or 2. I've been, getting ready for volleyball and focusing a lot on volleyball. But in late August, there was a video put out by Badger Football of a freshman, Cole LaCrue, singing Taylor Swift. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Love it.
Oh my God. It's awesome. It is so fun. It just looks fun. And it looks like that team is very tight to be able to sing Taylor Swift together. But there was a moment then in the start of the fourth quarter against Georgia Southern, jump around. And then I believe they go into Taylor Swift, You Belong With Me, the song that Cole LaCrue was singing in that viral video. And if you're listening, Badger Football, please, and maybe I missed this and they've done it already, and this is the second time they've done it, please keep doing that, because that is going to be an amazing tradition. And you can tell because the fans finished the song singing, just like Buttercup, just like several songs. Like when you get one of those, you did it right. And I love that moment that the fans were singing Taylor Swift. And, it actually led right to a sack, right the very first play of the fourth quarter. But did you notice that? Have I missed? Obviously I missed the post. And could this be a long-term thing? I hope it is.
Yeah, I hope it's a long-term thing too. And I feel like in the beginning, Camp Randall was kind of quiet. Obviously, it's an 11 a.m. game, which is tough. And then, it's non-conference. So it was quiet. There wasn't a lot of energy. And just, I think, for the home crowd to give something, whether it's singing Taylor Swift, which that works. So why not keep it going? And it's fun because everyone's seen that video since it went viral. So I think fans just kind of fed off of that. And if we can keep that going, it's good, because the Badgers need to gain some more energy from the home crowd when they're playing, especially 11 a.m. games. So I'm sure that helped feed into some of their fire in that second half too.
Yeah. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's from August 23rd on the Badger Football, at least on the Instagram account. I do not have TikTok, but I'm sure it's on the TikTok too. And so if you don't know, here, actually, let me see if I can share this. Oh boy. see if I can share this just so the people listening who may be like, what are they? I missed that. What are you guys talking about?
You got to watch it.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, you got to watch it. I was going to share it, but you know what? You just got to watch it. Basically, he's singing karaoke and it's awesome. All right. So Packer football. Now, this is obviously, I was at the Swamp. I was in Gainesville calling that epic 5-setter. So I didn't get to watch the Packers football game. I did pick up the highlights. I have been listening to the conversation around it, looking up the stats. And I do have some thoughts on the Packers. Number one, my number one thought, and it centers around Jordan Love. This is a good start. Okay. This is better than I thought the start could be. And that's nothing but positivity. Now, with that being said, back-to-back games with 3 touchdowns, that's amazing. There were also, he almost threw a pick 6. It probably should have been a pick 6. The 4th and 1, miscommunication, and that's probably a young quarterback. So not saying that he's perfect because there are still growing pains, but God dang it. Just starting with Jordan Love and his performance, you have to be happy if you're a Packer fan that this is going in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like, so I say for Badgers, I had kind of high expectations heading into the season. For the Packers, 0 expectations, none. No one really knew what they were going to look like with Jordan Love leading the way and so many new guys. Jordan Love has been so impressive. He's like poised in the pocket. He's confident. He's making the right reads. He's throwing some dimes too. I think I've been overly impressed with Jordan Love, and it makes me excited. I mean, obviously I've grown up in Wisconsin, so I know I'm supposed to be like a little bit biased, but I've been a Packers fan my whole life. And as a Packers fan, it makes me really excited for the future because he looks like the real deal. And if there's some mistakes like the 4th and 1, there's some little mistakes, like he missed Romeo Dobbs in the 4th quarter too. They were kind of off, but that's kind of like what you expect just for those things to happen. So I think overall, incredibly, incredibly impressed with the start from Jordan Love.
Yeah, I thought he got fortunate. I think I wrote down Love almost throws a pick in the 4th quarter, leading 24-19. And like, those are things that at the end of the day, it doesn't show up on the stat sheet. So as a fan, we're like, oh, look, no, he didn't throw a pick. But I mean, geez, it's very fortunate. And if he wants to be elite, because this is about as solid as a start, I think, as you possibly could have hoped for. Those types of things can't happen because what separates he's really good, man, to put another team away is those little things. So I'm not trying to give him a pass, but man, he's young and this is only his 2nd real full game. So this is, I mean, those are things I think that will come around. But man, the defense was getting gashed on the ground, just gashed on the ground. And that's something that scares me because I've seen in years past that type of porous defense against the ground game. And it almost gets to the point, or it can, I'm not saying it will, but there are times where it gets to the point where you just look, okay, do they have a good running back? Crap, it's going to be a long day. And that's, if you start getting to that, then you start relying on Jordan Love more because the other team is going to control the clock and probably score more than they should be scoring. So then you rely more on Jordan Love. How'd you see the defense?
Yeah, that was disappointing and defeating, after watching Jordan Love lead some great drives on offense. And then this defense, I mean, it was so bad. The run defense, they weren't close to tackling either of the running backs. There was like 10 guys and they were not, I just feel like it was just really bad. And, Coach LaFleur said they shredded us consistently. It wasn't good. We got gashed, like you said. So I'm sure the film was hard to watch. There needs to be a lot of improvement, though, in that run defense specifically for the Packers.
Yeah, that to me was disappointing because that's the kind of thing that if it lingers, it can be a really long season when teams start, being able to do that to you and control the game like that. And then, I mean, just to have that 4th quarter collapse.
Yeah.
This is a game that got away. This is a game that they probably should have been able to put away. Now, granted, there are other factors here because there's a factor with Aaron Jones, and you still haven't had Christian Watson play. wide receiver. And Aaron Jones is it shows how much they really need Aaron Jones, I think, because he's a playmaker and he can be the difference between, I understand, the defense has to stop Atlanta's offense, but sometimes your offense can help keep their offense from even getting onto the field.
Right. And Twitter was harsh to AJ Dillon,
Uh-huh.
social media in general. I know it was a really rough game for him. I know it's like, come on, you got to pick up a yard on 3rd and 1. But I do like Coach LaFleur was saying, like, it's not just Dillon, like, it's the run blocking and it's everything coming together. And I think Andy Herman, one of the Packers beat reporters, shared a video, slow motion of that 3rd and 1. And you do see that the blocking is not great either. So it's not all on AJ Dillon. Granted, he did stumble a few times, but that the run game on offense also has to get better for the Packers. And I also like something else LaFleur said. He said, we missed a lot of opportunities. We should have been up more going into the 4th quarter. So if something like that happens, you still have, some comfortability if your offense isn't moving the ball or whatnot. They should have been up more. That Jair Alexander almost had a pick 6 too for the Packers. And we just missed out on a lot of opportunities throughout the game. And it does hurt. It hurts because we should be 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
But as a Packers fan, like I said, no expectations. The loss is kind of like, well, Jordan Love still looked good. And, I think there's still a bright future this year for him. And I think we'll do okay this year. But yeah, we should be 2-0. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you're right. And there are positive aspects that you have to take away, right? Because it wasn't as if it was 25-3. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there are positive aspects there that probably make you feel a lot better than obviously if they weren't there. You talked about AJ Dillon. Yeah, there were a lot of bodies around where he was trying to go, and I believe I heard someone say that he admitted himself that he has to do a better job of not getting too far ahead of his skis or putting his head in front of his skis or whatever. And at the point being just lunging forward and just going a little out of control. And because he's so powerful that, when he is low and in control, as opposed to just trying to do things too quickly, he's a different running back. So that was a mistake. And I think that's a good way of placing the blame, if we want to place blame, on AJ Dillon for not being a little bit in a better position. But at the same time, man, even if he'd be banging into his own players and their defenders. And I'm not sure how that would have turned out anyway. And then after that, also you get the Jordan Love mistake compiled onto that, where he's the only one that goes on a quarterback sneak. So those two things really, really hurt them. And it's those little things that sometimes add up between 25-24 or they flip it the other way around and you're the one on top. It's those little things like that. And those things need to be corrected, I think, too.
Yeah, and I was going to say, obviously, David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins. But now Elton Jenkins is out for, multiple weeks with a sprained MCL. And David Bakhtiari is like week to week. Matt LaFleur said it's not a turf. He didn't really answer the question. He was just getting frustrated, but he said, it's not a turf thing. He just really was like, I don't want to talk about it. But he said it's swelling in Dave's knee, which is actually more concerning, I think, if that's why he's not playing, than it being a artificial turf versus grass thing for him. So the offensive line for the Packers, definitely also a concern moving forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we've covered all the three things we want to talk about. I did think the people would love to get to know you a little bit more too. So in the final minutes of this podcast, you came to Madison as a sports reporter at a very interesting time.
Yeah.
I believe it was March of 2020.
Yep.
And were you working in lacrosse before that? Is that correct?
Yep. I was working in lacrosse as the weekend sports anchor and then came to Madison at that time.
Okay. So what's it been like with that transition? Because like I said, you came to Madison at a really wacky time in the world.
Yeah, I was so excited to get started here. Obviously, crazy time. So we didn't do sports for, I don't know, like 6 months. So right when I came here, I became a news reporter for a while, and I was, covering, all the protests and then everything with COVID. And I was just kind of like taking it, I was like, this is a good opportunity for me to be a part of history and also just to report on the big stories. And, I was totally fine with it, but then once I got back into sports, I was like, oh, this is what I love. Like now I'm back in my real element. But yeah, it was a crazy start, but I feel like it was good for me to get that experience.
Were you always going to go into sports reporting? And the reason I say that, because obviously your sibling, it seems like your whole family into sports, right? With
Yeah.
sister at Marquette, a brother at Marquette too. I think tennis and
Yeah.
basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, huge basketball family. My dad played at Marquette, and then my brother and sister both played at Marquette too. It's funny whenever the Badgers take on Marquette, everyone's always asking me, "Who are you cheering for? Who are you cheering for?" And
Yeah.
my siblings kind of give me a little slack. Like I remember the first year, I'm covering the Badgers basketball team all the time, and I really like head coach Greg Gard. I love the team. Not cheering for anyone, but when I come home, they're always like, you're not getting any Christmas presents this year. Like, you're too much of a Badger fan.
Too close to the Badgers.
We grew up like really not liking Wisconsin. That was the whole thing when you're a huge Marquette basketball fan, the rivalry and everything. So it's just funny working here now. And but yeah, anyways, grew up in this sports family, and there's some videos of when I was really young. My grandpa, he would videotape me, and I would do my own sportscasts. And sometimes
No way.
I'll have to share it with you sometimes. Sometimes my sister Chloe would be in it, and we have a million videos. So seriously, from a young age, I just always knew that I wanted to do this. So I feel lucky that I knew and went to Indiana knowing that I wanted to do this. Interned in Milwaukee at a couple stations, and yeah, I just still love it so much.
Yeah. So you went to Bloomington, but you always probably wanted to come back to Wisconsin, going back to the internship, even working in lacrosse before Madison as well, right?
Right. And I kind of got lucky with my first job being in lacrosse, because you don't normally start like you just start wherever anyone gives you an opportunity. So for it to be in Wisconsin and only 3 hours away from home, I was like, okay, this is great. And then the Madison thing came up, and that was awesome. And now being sports director here, I'm only an hour away from my family. I love Madison, everything about it, the sports, the town, everything. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it and enjoying my job and enjoying being here. And it's just a huge perk too that I'm close to my family, because we're like together too much, honestly. So
How old were you when you were making these sports reporter videos?
I have to show you a video. I want to say I'm like 8.
Oh, wow.
Like I'm like pretty young. I mean, and then throughout, like some of them are kind of cringe in my.
Well, you were 8 or 9 or 10. You were just beginning.
I actually do this one. I think it's on my Twitter at some point, but I actually do a report on Wisconsin basketball, like when I was so young with my sister, and I said something like, I just think they need to play better in the second half or whatever.
You nailed it. That's it.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. So yeah, it's just fun to see, like, a dream come to reality.
Oh, that's super cool. So that was always something you knew right away. I'm pursuing this field. Is it what you thought it would be?
I think it is. However, it's tough. Like I'm going to tell if I might talk at Indiana University when I go there for the Wisconsin Indiana game. And I remember my professor saying this, like, you really want to get it across to people going into it that it's not easy. When you start, you are working holidays. Obviously the pay isn't what you really expect coming out of college. It's not great. And the hours are tough. So I think you really, really have to love it. And if you put the work and time in, it'll pay off. And I feel like now being, sports director, I feel like a lot of that hard work I put in the last 5 years has paid off. And I love this job and the people I work with and everything. But yeah, I think it's important to get that across, that it's not just, everyone's always like, oh, that's so cool, you're covering the Packers game or the Badgers game. But a lot of times I'm one-man banding it, filming my own stand-ups, and it can be stressful. So it's not all, what people think it is, but to me, I love it. So it's worth it, and it makes me happy.
I do think that's really important, not only to students getting into it. And that's what I would tell back when I had my radio job,
right.
Is I would tell interns when we had them, like, or when I would speak to a group of students as well, like, you got to be real. And I also think it's important. Maybe it's not important, but at least for someone listening to like this podcast who may be like, oh, I mean, you're on TV and everything's, but they don't understand like, where that industry is now and compared to like different markets too, especially lacrosse. Like you're doing everything.
Right.
You're shooting, everything is all you. So it's very time consuming, and sports don't just stop on the weekend. That's when sports really flourish. So
Mhm.
you start committing yourself to 5, 6, 7 days a week. And that's something I'm not sure people realize either. I also think though, too, like it's important nowadays. What I would also say is, yes, all these things are true. And there are also opportunities outside of traditional routes of radio and or television that
Mhm.
there haven't been before. Like what we're speaking in right now is like a broadcast studio online, and you don't need a journalism degree with this. And even if you had one, you could start your own. I guess my point is there are more opportunities now through podcasting, through this type of a setup. As mass comm students or journalism students, like there are more options too, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think there are a lot of options. I think it's important to intern, because you really get an idea of what it looks like. But
Mhm.
one other thing I want to get across too is what I didn't expect, but I am like blown away with is just how supportive everyone in Wisconsin is.
Mm.
Especially all the female broadcasters. I feel like there's no, like nobody's trying to be better than the next. Like everyone is so supportive with each other. And I think that's really helped. Even when I'm out in the field and if I'm by myself, anyone around me is going to be like, oh, do you want to help like make sure your shot's in focus or whatever
Yeah.
it might be? And I feel just lucky to be in this market because everyone is just so nice and supportive and
Wow.
helpful. And
That's
yeah,
that's cool because I don't know. I don't know, but I'm assuming it's not always been like that, right?
right,
Like there are competing stations, and if you're better
right.
than me, then that affects me. And there's so I think it's really cool to see like obviously you want to be competitive at some level, like
Yep,
you want to do well and have your
right.
work show that you do well, but there's also that just kindness that we're all in it together kind of thing that I think that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's awesome. Even in Madison, I know I said the female broadcasters across the state, but in Madison with Jocko and Zach, like obviously we're each other's biggest competition. We're all the sports directors at the three stations, but at football games, like we're like, love you guys, like good luck tonight, whatever it might be. Like if you need help with something out there, we're willing to help each other, and it's just nice to have that where you're competitive because it motivates you in your job, of course, but it's just also nice to have that support and friendship like across because everyone's in it together.
Yeah. Man, sometimes we just talk about, I don't like to bore the audience sometimes. Sometimes I feel like if we get too inside baseball, they're like, oh no, they're just talking about their jobs in the media. But I find this stuff so interesting. And I really find that I like the fact that everybody's
Mhm.
like, very supportive, I guess, of
Yeah.
each other. All right. So when are you going? When is the basketball game at Indiana that you're going to go to?
So actually, the football game,
Football game, sorry.
Wisconsin, but I'd love to go to the
Okay.
basketball game too. Honestly,
Okay.
but Wisconsin, Indiana football. That's November 4th.
November 4th. Okay.
Yeah, so that'll be a big one, fun one to cover. It's my first time back to
Yeah.
Indiana, which is actually crazy, but yeah, it'll be cool.
Have you ever sat at the very top of Assembly Hall? Very top seats. Have you ever experienced
Not
that?
very top seats. I've been in student section, not very top seats. No.
I went there during a women's basketball practice. I said, it's a
Okay.
couple of years ago. I'm like, you know what? I've been here several times. I'm gonna finally. So I trudged up the stairs. I got to the very top seat. It's a weird deal for those who don't know. Like it is like you're looking straight down at the court. Like you're so high up. It's at such a weird angle. You feel like it.
I can see that.
I would be paranoid. I'd be very careful on those stairs because it feels like if you tripped on the stairs, you would just
Right.
keep tripping all the way down to the court.
Right. No, I can definitely see that actually. Yeah, I've been fortunate to be in the student section seating, but
Sure.
now thinking about that, 100% I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy angle. Karley, thank you so much for taking some time to talk some Wisconsin and Packer stuff with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I could talk to you forever. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll do it again. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. There you go. That is our today's podcast guest, Karley Marotta. Hey, a reminder, johncastpodcast.com. You can go there, you can catch the episodes, you can sign up for my newsletter. But the most important thing, please follow and or subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks again to Karley. I've got more great guests coming up to join the show. And once again, I'll try to get another volleyball specific guest from within the program. We'll see how that goes coming up here not too far down the road. But once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the John Cast Podcast. Goodbye.